Yes. We on. Here we go. Hey everybody, sorry for the delay. We were having problems with StreamYard, but we weren't gonna stop because we gotta get this information out to everybody. We know this is gonna be a very informative session. We're looking forward to it. I have my girl here, Tasha Harris. I mean, when I say y'all, we have become great friends, whether she know it or not. But we have become great friends. We're missing Crystal tonight. Tonight is Crystal's anniversary, so we're saying happy anniversary, Crystal and Dave. We hope you guys are enjoying yourself tonight. But I do have my capable co-host here, my other one. Bunny couldn't listen, I couldn't fly solo. I needed one of them here. So we have Bunny here, grandma of Gray Bear. Love her to pieces. She lives in the DMV, grew up in this area. Of course, me, Morgan Pop's mom, and Jeremy as well, married to Hart. And I grew up in the DMV and just ready to be here just to turn the session over to Tasha because we are getting started a little late tonight, so we may finish off a little late, but we have a great session. And I've already warned her we've had part one and part two before. I don't know if we're going to be able to get through all of this information, but what I want to do is turn this over to Tasha.
Yes.
Tasha, go ahead and take it over. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we dive into the information.
Absolutely, absolutely. So my name is Taisha Harris. I have worked in human services for over 20 years now. That's crazy. Started as a direct support professional with, I'm from New York originally. And so they were called the ARC, Duchess ARC up there. So I started with them there and I've worked in various positions. I've worked with the autistic population at a prominent agency in New York, Anderson Center for Autism. And then when I moved down here, I transitioned into a CCS's role. And what the CCS is, the Coordinator of Community Services, AKA Service Coordinator. I worked with service coordination for the past 7 years. And I am now a director at a DDA agency here in Baltimore County at Sunrise Cedars Inc. We provide residential services, day services, supportive services, remote services, just about everything. And we're looking to expand. So, my experience in this field is vast. And I will say that being a CCS has definitely given me the most knowledge because it gives you exposure to the different waivers that Maryland has to offer. One thing I will say about Maryland is very progressive when it comes to taking a person-centered approach for all of your children, grandchildren, loved ones. They are very moving, they are very forward thinking in setting up their lives to be as independent as possible for them.
Okay. So what you deal most in is the transition services. Can you tell us? Some people have a misconception of whether it's 18, 21. Can you tell us what age our adults transition over?
So here's what I will say. You want to make sure you have transitioned into adult services by 21, no later than 21. When you start the transition process, you want to make sure you have enough information to justify the need for services. So just because your child has a developmental disability does not mean that they're going to get enrolled and be accepted into DDA. DDA offers three different waivers. There's the family supports waiver, the community supports waiver, and the community pathways waiver. If your child appears to be not disabled enough, they will put you in the supports only category. Okay. So I say all that to say, when you are getting ready to apply, you want to make sure that you have your neuropsychological assessment. You want to make sure you have a recent psychological assessment. You want to make sure that those assessments are done within a timely manner. So when your kids are in school and they're in early ed, they get all those assessments done.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure that you're also getting those assessments done when they're in high school. That's when it's the most important. So at that point, once you have those assessments done, then you apply for DDA services. That could be 15, 16. Every child is different. So it really takes you trusting in your circle of support, being honest with them so that they can guide you. Because it's really going to be based on those needs. Some people, even though they're developmentally disabled, possess enough independent skills where they really don't need supports. They really don't. They may need a little bit of guidance, but they don't really need, actual 24-hour supervision or to remain in one's eyesight. Where there's others who do need that, right? So you want to make sure that you have enough documentation to justify the need for services.
Okay.
It always has to be based on a need, not a want. Okay.
And Tasha, quick question.
Yes.
So these services are only for those that are turning 18. Are there any services that are offered to those under the age of 18?
So the services that I'm speaking of for DDA, you do not become eligible for DDA services until you turn 21. And the reason that is because there's so many other programs available to children up to that age, right? So what I would suggest is if your child has a diagnosis of autism, definitely put them on the waiting list for the autism waiver.
And that starts at what age?
I would put them on the list as early as possible, as soon as they are diagnosed.
Okay.
That could be different for everyone.
It's like a 10-year waiting list.
It could, exactly. Now, I noticed that there are more agencies popping up in the autism waiver, so it may not be as long. But the state and DDA, it's the state and the federal government, because that's where those funds are coming from. They work in tandem, right? And so sometimes you have to move around money in order to redistribute that money. And that seems to be what's happening. So now you'll start to see more and more providers offering services for those in the autism waiver, because there's a major need there.
Mm-hmm.
It just takes time.
Absolutely.
It just takes time. So if hopefully, your schools that your kids are attending have a social worker, a transitions coordinator, a good teacher, someone who is kind of that community liaison to connect those dots for you, because you need that. There's a lot of information out here and no one wants to work harder incessantly. You want to apply for the waiver that's going to meet your needs. So if your child is experiencing behavioral issues, as mentioned, I work for Celebrate Abilities. Don't want to go too deep into them, but what I will say is they provide services that can help, address some of those issues.
Mm-hmm.
And they employ parents and empower parents to really be a great advocate for their children in many ways.
Now, I want to go back a little bit because, I know that your specialty is in DDA. I do know that. And for those that don't know it, again, that is when your child becomes 21.
Yes.
That's when they'll be available for those services. So I know that you were saying that there are a lot of services that are popping up before the age of 21. I'm going to be honest with you. That was not the case for me with my daughter. So can you tell us, we know about the autism waiver. Can you mention offhand what are some of these services or some of these programs that we're missing out on, because many of us parents are not being told about a lot of the programs that our kids could potentially receive funding from?
So it's really based through the autism waiver, those services and that provider. So every provider, as you guys know, is not the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've only had experience as a adult life planner with Celebratability. So I can only speak to them. They offer a plethora of service, from family consultation to case management. They also have CCSs there who are coordinators for community services. They offer self-directed services for when your child does become an adult. They offer respite. They offer intensive therapy and supportive services. So it does depend on your child being approved for that waiver.
So the autism
Unless you have enough money to, pay private duty, which could get costly, but the autism waiver is definitely going to be your ticket to all of those services.
So that's where a lot of people, for those that are listening, and I will say for me, Morgan began to get more services when she was approved for the autism waiver. Now, the unfortunate part about it is, like Bunny said, there is a waiting list. There's a waiting list for the autism waiver. So it's like that's your key to everything. However, if you're in that waiting list and your name is not being called, then you're sitting back. And that's where the unfortunate part comes in. You're sitting back and you're basically, your pockets are being burnt out by all of these extraordinary needs for your children, because this is the only thing, this is the only waiver from 21 and below that's going to get your child anything.
I mean, I see a comment from Ms. Summers saying that, her child was on the waiver since he was 5 and just got a slot when he was 22. Here's what I will say.
Crazy.
Yeah.
That is crazy, because guess what? Should be hopefully
off of it, right?
Off of it.
That's
right.
What
so he should be enrolled in
DDA.
If you're in Maryland, now I can't speak for the other states, but if you're in Maryland, he should have been identified as a GTYI. GTYI stands for Governor Transitioning Youth Incentive. That means Maryland has put money to the side for your child to access up until the age of 21. A lot of people do not follow through. And so they miss that. He's in VA. Honestly, I don't know the process for VA, but let's have a part 2. And I will try to get you some information on it, because there are ways that you can navigate around. It has to be a crisis situation. You have to make it like it's a crisis and there's a need. So I will look into, what services they offer in VA. And come back and provide some information on that.
And that's what I was going to ask you too, Tasha. I was going to ask you, is the autism, I know you said this is a federal program. So is this from state to state to state? Is this the same with DDA?
So DDA, every state has their own programs that they've come up with. Some states, like Maryland is the first state that I've ever referred to DDA. In New York, it's the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities. They're all run by COMAR. COMAR is the federal overseer. The autism waiver is funded federally, but also funded through the Department of Education, which is why they have, so much involvement. Sorry, let me turn my light on. Give me 1 second.
See, I'm just like, this is a lot of components. Yeah, I'm gonna hold off on. I have more questions, but yeah, can you break that down as far as the autism waiver and how it varies from state to state exactly with the DDA as well?
So again, I can only speak to Maryland. What I would encourage everyone to do is go on your state's website. So if that's Virginia, DC, they all operate under Department of Health. Okay. You should be able to put in services or waivers for people with special needs, and then that information should populate. So most states do offer various waivers for, you know, your loved one. The application process is different. So like your son Zion, who, and I just keep referring to him because that's that comment, his school should have had a transitions coordinator that should have started preparing you guys for this, right? So if he would, even if it was a 4-year track, a 4-year and a 6-year, even if it was 4 years, you still get that transition coordinator involved to help transition smoothly into adult services.
Okay. So at this point, in most of the states, though, the autism waiver runs out at 21. And then they'll go over to their transition services, which in Maryland is DDA. But like you say, each state has their own. Let me ask you, what if I was to move out of Maryland and move to another state? Would I have to go on to their waiting list, or would mine transfer over there?
So what would happen is we would have to, your CCS, so once you transition over, your CCS, your center, your coordinator for community services, would look for what waivers and the system that state offers. Every state has a different system. I had someone who was a much older man. His mother had passed away. His brother lived in Colorado. It was seamless transferring him to Colorado. All I needed to do, I reached out to their public service agent, got consents from my individual and his family. I forwarded over his, at that time, it was the individual plan, which is now called the person-centered plan. I forwarded that information over, and then I was able to set up an intake meeting for him, and he was in services immediately. Wow. New York, the parents had to do the delay.
No delay
to apply. So, you know, all I was able to do was give her the information. Now, granted, New York is not as big as Colorado, or I mean, it's big, but not in that way. So there's one overseeing agency that she had to speak with. And then she went through that transition process. And my understanding is her daughter transitioned fine as well. But every state is different. So it's really going to be a matter of you connecting with your CCS, giving them enough notice, because, you know, you are dealing with federal agencies, so you want to allow time for that communication, but for them to be able to prepare like kind of a transition timeline for even you guys.
Okay. Now, one thing, and I'm going to put somebody else's question up here. One thing that came up with Tasha for Morgan is Morgan will be 21, but she'll still be in school because her birthday is in September. So the school year starts in August. She won't be 21. So my question was, does she start, even though she comes off the autism waiver at 21, she's not out of school at 21. So how does that affect her going throughout that school year? Is she dropped? Is there a gap in services before she goes to DDA? Tasha,
right?
Yeah, Tasha,
so,
like Paula, I don't know, but
I sure did. I did, and it was a really good question. So because the Department of Education is involved in the waiver, the autism waiver will carry you through that school year. So as long as you're enrolled in DDA services, you can tap into those services whenever you're ready, right? So for Morgan, there won't be a lapse in her services. You can give Morgan a little break, have her start August 1st if you want to, and then that'll become her annual plan date, also known as an effective date. And her services and her plans and everything will be based off of that date. There are people, though, who graduate with a high school diploma in 4 years. Even though they graduate at 18, you're still not able to tap into services with DDA until 21.
So there's a gap for 3 years.
There's a gap. And I know there's talks about changing that, but right now there's a lapse. However, there's other waivers that you can tap into to try to fill in those spaces, right? So there's something called the Community First Choice Waiver. That's more or less run by the state. So that's in Maryland, okay? You would apply for that waiver and see what kind of services you could get. You have doors that you could tap into. Okay. Doors is going to help prepare your child for work. And I know everyone says that their child is not prepared to go out in the community, but you'd be surprised what your child could do with somebody else. They know how to get over on you guys. I hate to tell you. So, but with someone else, you know, there's career assessments developed specifically for, you know, people with special needs. And they're put through kind of like a internship, if you will. You know, they go to different locations, they see what works for them. And sometimes jobs just don't work, right? Like everyone's not fit to work in the community, whether that's with or without supports, but at least they have those opportunities. So it would be, you know, if that was to happen and your child did graduate at 18, there are other services as of right now, you know, that would help to fill that gap.
But they could still be on the autism waiver also, right, until that time.
They could, but those hours are not going to increase or change because they're in the right. So the hours that are identified within the autism waiver are set. So it's not going to change because they don't have school. So you're still required to fill in on those.
And you're going to need more of that. You're going to, because they're going to have a full day versus they're in school and they get out of school. Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So you would have to plan for, you know, that entire day and evening.
This is what Denise is saying about Zion. He was on an elderly consumer waiver before that, and we did have a crisis. Her husband had a stroke, and he aged out of school. So Denise, and I think this was my question before, Denise, when you was on there, can you tell us what, since he's not on the autism waiver now because he has to age out at 21, what waiver is he on now? Is he on the Virginia's form of the DDA waiver? Is it called elderly consumer waiver? Have you ever heard of that, Tasha?
Not at all. I have not heard of that.
Okay.
Not for Maryland.
Okay.
Now there are expansions happening. And so Service Coordination had a sub program called Moncordia. And the goal of Moncordia was to keep, and this is a totally different topic, so we could circle back to that, but it was to keep elderly people at home versus going to a nursing home. But that required working with a registered nurse and developing treatment plans and things like that. But I've never heard of a child being put on the elderly care waiver. And I'm not familiar with Virginia waivers.
But I would be curious to know. What waiver. When he came off the autism waiver, she said his waiver is disabled waiver. Okay, so once he came off the disabled waiver. Yes. So she said his waiver is a disabled waiver. So once he came off of the autism waiver at 21, he now became part of the disabled waiver. That's what I'm assuming, Denise.
Now, did she get any contacts? I think down there they're called human service workers. Has she been contacted by a human service worker?
Denise, when you get
to move him forward and get him enrolled in services?
Yeah, because I do believe once we talked, this was I asked her at one time, I think she was on the show, and I asked her what did Zion do throughout the day, and and she was telling me I didn't think he had anything, and I was like, that's unheard of, Denise.
Yeah,
because he should have something that he's doing like throughout the day. I knew enough to know that.
Yes,
she said definitely. He had a caseworker. You mean had as in past tense? And I think, Denise, we had talked about this when you were on the show.
Let's circle back. What exactly is a disabled waiver?
Yeah, a disabled waiver, and what does his day look like on this waiver? Yes.
Because here's the thing, the different waivers, well, when they first, like for the waivers for Maryland, the 3 waivers I mentioned before, initially when they rolled out, they came with a financial cap. right? So there was, I think the family supports waiver only gave like 12,500. The community supports waiver gave 25,000, and the community pathways waiver was kind of endless. And so as a service coordinator, we were tasked with trying to fit these services that our individuals need without going over that cap. Maryland has done away with that. They operate based on what does the individual need to have so that they can have a meaningful life. And that's what you develop the plans on, the budgets, the services, the waiver application, everything. So I would assume that, again, Denise, I'm not 100%, but I would assume that Virginia kind of operates the same. So if he's on the disabled waiver and you had a human services worker, did she not think that he was appropriate for services and supports throughout the day?
See, and I remember I remember Denise said that he did not do anything throughout the day, if I'm not mistaken. And I was like, Denise, that's not right. I said,
Yeah.
Something's not right. And I think
because
Denise,
they wouldn't have put him in the waiver if there wasn't a justification for those services.
mm-hmm.
So you don't just get the waiver because your child is developmentally disabled. That's not a guarantee. There has to be a justification for the means, right? So, the human services worker or caseworker that you had to justify the need for him to even be applying for the waiver.
Mm-hmm.
There had to be a reason for him to apply for the waiver.
Okay.
So I don't know what his status is. A lot of times what happens is, what I have seen with these waivers, it's just like anything with federal. You have to recertify.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be done annually. And they are very nosy and want to get all in your business. It's just, if you have life insurance policies, anything in that's related to your loved one, they want to know about it, right? And they really want to know about it just to make sure they're not going over that threshold. So the threshold, just so you guys all know, as of right now, is $2,000.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a federal cap, right? So as long as your child, I always suggest keeping it at 1,500 and you're golden. You can create other accounts. You can use it for spending. Just keep them at that threshold. If people do not recertify in a timely manner, then you get disenrolled from the waiver.
Mm-hmm.
So family waiver, CL waiver, DD waiver is V. Okay, so was he on the DD waiver? Because it kind of sounds like they mimic us.
Mm-hmm. But they should have his needs like broken out. Like you told me, they should have kind of assessed it when he was 20, and they should have it broken down to see what his needs were. And then once he turns 21, that the light switch comes on, correct?
Correct.
Specifications.
So then what happens is once he turns 21, you start working with your service coordinator before 21 because you want to make sure he's enrolled. So by around 20, DDA doesn't need that long. So when they turn 20, you give it like 6 months. You start the waiver application here. And that is where you meet with your CCS and you just start talking about, hey, what does Morgan like to do? Morgan likes to shop. She likes to go to movies. She loves going out to eat. She's really into the library. She likes to volunteer. She loves animals. Oh, okay. These are some of the services I think may be a good fit for her. Mm-hmm. Employment services, community development services, personal supports. If she is interested in possibly getting a job, you would check off employment services. What I say to folks is when you are applying for that waiver, initially, any service that you think they could benefit from, check it. Together, you could figure out a need for that service. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I will say the DMV wants is for all people that are able to work. So they want them to have employable skills. So they're going to say, oh, okay, well, we'll approve all of these services. Now they're all approved. So then as you find people that you like working with and things, now you just got to fill it in. But all of those services have been approved. Same thing would go for self-directed, that should be its own podcast.
I know. I want you to touch on that though, because I've been singing the praises of that.
Yeah. But same with self-directed. Once you get that plan approved or that budget approved, you're good for the year.
And that's done when they're 20 years old, correct?
20 years old. So then when they turn 21, when they finish school, they're ready to go. And they're ready to start on with their next path in life.
So are there waiting lists after? Do they have waiting lists for all of these waivers?
They do. So what happens is when you originally
are there waiting lists for all of these waivers?
Yes. So when you apply to DDA, right now, DDA does not have services for children under 21, unfortunately. So when you apply to DDA, as long as you've submitted the proper paperwork, DDA is going to send you back a letter saying, hello, your child has been deemed eligible. However, they have been placed on the waiting list. And so it's going to be waiting list current request, which basically means, hey, your child is stable for right now. We see that you have proven that, yes, they meet the need, they will be approved, but they're okay for right now. So that could mean they're in school, they've got supports, they're through the autism waiver, what have you. Then when you turn 21, that's when you're going to start meeting with your CCS and really start developing the waiver packet and the services and determine which service model you're going to want to do. There's 2 service models in Maryland: traditional service and self-directed. Traditional services is you sending your child with a provider. And that doesn't mean that the provider is a day hab. It just means that you are entrusting your child to have services rendered by this agency for a certain amount of time. They're going to hire the staff. They're going to create the activities for your child with your input. They're going to make sure they're safe. They're going to make sure that they get fed, and then they're going to bring them back to you, right? So that's the traditional aspect of it.
And it's like an extension of the school from what I look. It's like a center, like you're sending them to like almost like a day center where they have
in some cases, so DDA is moving away from day halves.
Okay.
They don't think that it's a really good setting to have people sitting in a room all day.
I agree.
I do too. So I love the idea of community integration. I think that's the best way for people to learn how to work with folks with special needs. And it's also great opportunities for our loved ones. I mean, all the social skill building that happens just from a transaction on, getting a Snickers bar, right? So all of those things we take for granted, those things actually help out our folks.
Yeah.
And so what you'll find is some agencies will have a facility for them to come to, because if it rains, sometimes they don't want to go out. They don't want to be in the community. They'd rather sit, watch a movie. So, the facilities are moving in more of those directions, creating more of like a sensory environment where there's different stimulation, exercise rooms, movie rooms, sensory rooms, quiet rooms, art therapy, bringing in different people. You find people bringing in mobile barbers and nail techs, all types of stuff. But the idea is to get them out in the community.
Yeah.
So whether that's volunteering through Meals on Wheels, or, like I said, if they like animals, having them work at a therapeutic horse farm or working at Barks, those are all things. It's really being catered to meet the individual's needs and just to overall create their independence. And independence doesn't mean that they're going to be living on their own, right? That may be the case for some people. Independence just means that they're able to do whatever they can do to the best of their ability. We sometimes see their full potential before they do. And so, yeah, it's our job to push them.
Absolutely.
We're going to push them. But if we know that they have met their benchmark, we're going to also give them praises, you know? And so with self-directed is giving you full employer authority. Your child is their own boss, or their guardian is their own boss. You develop the budget along with your CCS. Your CCS is the one who's going to really do like the financials, but you will have input on how much you want to pay that employee. The ranges are different depending on what county you're in. So, you know, there's customary rates that the DDA has set, and there's certain aspects of self-directed that you will need to have, such as a financial management company. They're going to act as like your payroll. So they'll make sure your staff are all paid. They'll make sure the taxes are taken care of. The background checks are done. And then you would have a support broker. And the support broker kind of serves as like your administrative assistant. They're going to touch base with the FMCF if the staff didn't get paid right, or if the pay rates aren't correct. But the hardest part of self-directed is really just developing the budget and finding people that you trust enough to provide that service for your loved one.
But like you say too, Tasha, some people have an array of family that they can hire. So understand with self-directed services, your child is the boss. Yeah. And your child basically can say, I want to hire my mama, my daddy, my cousin, my brother, for all of the various positions. They can hire who they want.
Who they want to. Mm-hmm. And the support broker will help you interview people. Some people may not have family or a big circle of support, right? I didn't hear. I'm sorry. What was that?
What was that, Bonnie? I thought Bunny said something.
I did too.
Okay, so
we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Bunny.
Okay. I was saying with them having the authorization, to hire, do the people that they hire get approved? If they hire mom and dad, family members, are they approved?
Oh yeah, yep. DDA allows. So there's a form that you fill out. It's the family of staff form. So literally anyone who's family, not the best friend who they refer as auntie, right? So we're talking about blood relatives. They get listed as family of staff. And that's it. And it's just a matter of identifying what role they're going to play. So if they are your DDA offers, one service is called personal supports. And so personal supports is kind of like a free service where, I don't want to say free, but it's more forgiving in that you can work on just about anything. You can work on adaptive living skills. You can work on budgeting. You can do grocery shopping, community involvement. Families can provide that service. So if your nephew is going to be the one providing it, then it's just, Marcus Daly, and then just the service that he's going to provide. And you're going to list all of the family on that document. Your grandson would sign it because, again, he's the employer of his authority. And then it just gets processed. It gets processed with the FMCS because the FMCS agency wants to make sure. DDA is tightening things up with self-directed, but they want to make sure whoever is family, we know that they're family. They still have to go through a background check. They still have to go through all of that. But, we got them listed as family. Another thing, too, is with certain services, if you live in the same home, then you guys are exempt from taxes on those earnings.
Isn't that nice?
Personal supports is the one service so far that they do allow for it's called an EVV exemption. So right now, for all of you parents who are doing these EVV clock-ins, right, with like the autism waiver, it's a bit of a pain in the butt because you're a parent all day and who remembers to clock in and out, right? So once you get to DDA says, oh, well, we have the EVV exemption, which I'm sure will transfer over. It's just going to probably take some time. And all that you are required is to send in proof of residency. That's it. A utility bill, insurance, the CCS that you're working with fills out a document, submits it into a database that we use called LTSS. And it's approved usually within 24 to 48 hours. And so then that frees you up. So all the money that you earn while working with your child is tax-free.
Look at this. Can you believe this?
Tax-free.
We have finally reached the mountaintop.
And I do think it will transfer over, but it just seems like the autism waiver is a little behind on the EVV. So give it some time. I'm sure that's going to roll out for you guys soon.
Now,
And if I become
somebody
aware of it, I'll
asked how
definitely share it with you.
Yeah, so somebody asked, how do they know it's really family? I guess once you, because you know, everybody is family these days. That's auntie such and such and
That's true. I mean, listen, if your CCS is there to work with you guys for as long as everybody gets along, no one's going to ask for birth certificates or proof. You know, if this person is your brother, that's your brother. You know, I do have some people, I've had others who were family church members and they just want to be listed as that. However you refer to yourself. But there is a family and staff form. So if you are going to be referred as family, you have to go on that form.
so if
But there's also a contract. That's what I was going. Thank you, Paula.
Yeah.
Because there is a contract that you will also sign that lists everyone that will be in contact with your child, with the exception of the CCS, because the CCS's role is pretty clear. But they do want to know. So that's where you're going to list everybody: mom, dad, brothers, nephews, church members, family, friends, aunties, cousins. You're going to list everyone and you're going to list their role.
And I'm going to say this. I personally would not play with the federal government. That's just me. I ain't lying and saying somebody's my cousin and they really not. I mean, that's just me. I feel like at this point, you know, I know that the families are exempt from paying taxes on this money, correct?
No. Only if you are living. So you have to live with, so whoever resides at the home with that individual, they're all exempt. So like Morgan, her brother, you know, he would be exempt. Your husband would be exempt, right? If grandma came and moved in with you guys, she would be exempt if she was providing services. You have to live in the same residence. That's why they ask for proof. And they ask for proof from everyone who's going to be working with her.
So if they're not, even though they're in the family, but they're not living in a home, they pay taxes on it.
They pay taxes.
Okay,
yes.
I'm glad you brought that up because
Yes.
I was under the assumption that if they were family.
No, it's at this point, it's just for the living caregiver exemption.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
It could change. It could change. One thing you guys have to know about DDA, it is ever evolving.
I hope it don't evolve to where it take that away.
No. It's not. What I'm noticing is they're trying to make self-directed more user-friendly. Now, they may put a cap on how many hours a family member can do and things like that. Right now, again, as long as you can justify, they want a schedule. So, you know, we always include a schedule. But that schedule is usually just a tentative schedule because it's supposed to be person-centered. So that's, as a CCS, I used to always document and develop my plans based on a person-centered approach. So if Morgan was someone who sometimes she just didn't feel like getting out of bed, I put that in her plan so that they knew she might not want to get out of bed. So, you know, whereas yesterday she got up and services started at 8 o'clock, today she might not want to get up and start until 12. That's just, you know, that's just how people are.
Wow, this is awesome information. I'm serious because when I started working with Tasha and she started telling me this, I'm like, what? Now, Tasha, tell us this. Tell what you told me. What are some of the positions that you guys have under that? I know you have the CCS, you have the broker. What are some of the other positions that are listed up under that?
Under self-directed?
Yes, under self-directed.
So really, So when you do self-directed, DDA requires that you have a fiscal management counseling service, which right now there are only 3 agencies in Maryland. Let me take that back. I know for a fact there are 2 agencies. I think the third one, they started with them, but they're coming back. Right now, it's ARC of Central Chesapeake and a provider called GTT. ARC of Central Chesapeake is here in the state. It's in person. GTT operates everything remote. So you will need to choose one of those, and you will have to have a support broker.
Okay.
Those are the only 2 services you have to have. But what I will say is, and you will have a CCS. The CCS is the person that keeps you connected in DDA services.
Mm-hmm.
They keep you connected in the waiver. So even if you say, oh man, I don't want to do this personal supports anymore. We feel like we don't need personal supports. Okay, well, maybe we can increase those hours in CDS, right? So you want to always make sure your child is receiving some sort of service in order to stay active in the waiver once you get there, okay? You could go back and forth between traditional and self-directed. The main person that is always going to be in your life is the CCS.
Okay.
As long as you're active in the waiver.
Okay.
If you go self-directed, you'll have a support broker and you'll have an FMCS. That's it.
A guarantee.
That's a guarantee. Everyone else beyond that in self-directed is who you choose to hire.
But
And let me just add, there
like
is money available set aside that is not included in the budget. Right now, I think it's about $500. That might increase just for advertising to get staff. So DDA has accounted for that. And they don't even include that. That's kind of like a gift that they give that $500 advertisement fee with self-directed.
You hear this, Bonnie? You hear this?
Self-directed is a great, both service models work for who they work for.
I hear it, yes. Yes.
They do. And again, depending on the county that you live in, the rates,
What
me
people
and
work
Paula were
for?
talking about those rates. Some of the rates, the rates are,
They're pretty hefty.
they're pretty hefty.
They're pretty good,
hefty.
I tell you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things was a community-based person. That's one person that stood out to me because that's kind of like the person that would be the one kind of monitoring the schedule. Like you give them a schedule of, hey, I want her to eat breakfast at 8 o'clock and then take a bath at 9 o'clock and then she's going to go to this activity. That's the person that kind of is monitoring their whole day-to-day, and they're working with them to make sure that schedule is, fulfilled.
Absolutely. And so that service would be, right now it's called Community Development Services.
Mm-hmm.
And what Community Development Service allows for the staff to come in and prepare your child to leave the house, right? So that services is purely a community-based service. They do account for days where your child is sick and things of that sort, but really it's just, they want them out in the community. And the recreation calendar can be filled with whatever you find. If they're into flowers and there's a plant festival happening, they could do that. They could take them to the Y and take them swimming. They can take them to art therapy. They can even assist with medical appointments. Some people have support staff that they've been working with since their child were babies, and so they feel comfortable enough to even have them assist with medical appointments. They could take them out to lunch. It's really it's a service that allows for up to 40 hours a week. And it tends to end around 4 o'clock, but with self-directed, you create your own schedule. So it's, what works for you. And then in the evening is where you would focus more on like personal support. So that's winding down, preparing for dinner. The parent comes in, or the sister or the aunt, and they help them wind down and work on meal prep, or maybe some physical activity, or if they're interested in opening a business, self-directed has money to help with that. We have a lot of talent in this population. So I do see DDA growing more, and with their services that they're offering, They offer housing supports, which operates as like, it reminds me of a Section 8. Only DDA is the one who provides that rent subsidy. So the person is responsible for 30% of whatever that market value rent is, which in a lot of time right now it's about $325. And then it makes them eligible for other services through MEEP and, you know, all of these energy provider programs and SNAP. And they also would be eligible for services there. You know, if they needed someone to kind of live with them, to just make sure they ate and took their meds, but were pretty good for the most part, they have a living caregiver. Or they have someone that could just be there during the day to help them do their grocery shopping and take them out and do their errands, but they're fine in the evening. They're fine by themselves on the overnight. They're good. They don't need anybody. There's a lot of services out there. There really are. And it allows you guys to really paint the picture for how you see the future for your loved one.
I love it. I love it. Now, me and hubby went to it was something at the University of Maryland maybe like a month ago. And they had it where they had all the vendors. I forgot what it was called. I think it was Disability Day or something.
Yes.
And we went to that and they had all types of booths. It was funny because when we went and I was talking about self-directed services, a lot of the centers were shooing me away like, we're not doing that. And I'm like, wow. I said, it's funny because I see that as being something that is more beneficial to the child and to the parents, because at this point for me, Morgan doesn't want to go and deal with anybody else. She would love to be at home doing her own thing or setting, you know, her own schedule. So a lot of the people were like, no, but there were some other people that were like, great. But I was just saying to myself that knowing what I know about self-directed services, if you don't get on board, you're going to kind of lose out on a lot of people coming to your center, because most people are not looking for, that I've talked to, are not looking for that traditional way of doing things.
Absolutely.
They're
absolutely.
not.
Absolutely. It's so what happens is with the providers, I mean, they want to stay in business, right? And so when people are doing self-directed, now you could still partner with them because maybe there's certain aspects of self-directed that you like, but your child really likes going to this day program. They've been going there for the last 15 years. Their best friends are there. They're used to the staff and the program. And so that day program could come on as a vendor. In that case, you would sign a contract. There's specific rates, again, that DDA is identified. And they're definitely customary. And so you would sign a contract between the vendor and your child, who's the employer of authority, and saying, hey, we're going to render these services to you for a certain amount of hours. But there's a lot of people that don't want to do that. They want to be able to take their child to the museum if they want to, and, you know, just to have that freedom. It's what you guys are needing. Some families, they're working every day. They work all day. They want to do self-directed. It sounds enticing, but they don't have the support. They don't have the time, right? So, and then finding people to work with their child is so overwhelming for them that they would rather start with traditional, let me get my footing, and then I could switch over. And that's the thing. You can start in one service model. And if it doesn't work for you, you can always switch to the next. The process is still going to be the same. You're still going to have to justify the needs. With self-directed, they scrutinize a little more because, you know, with the money. But usually when you put in what the child is doing, what they're planning on doing, here's the schedule, there's no conflict, the rates are broken down, the taxes are there, because they'll look for any reason to send a document back. Usually you can get it passed through. You can. And you know, you don't need to put in a lot of words. It's a matter of Morgan would like to do X, Y, and Z on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. On Monday, she likes to go here, and that's an hour drive. So there's transportation services where the staff get mileage reimbursements, and that's set by the federal rates. But there's a lot of services available. There's assistive technology. If your child is nonverbal and you want to, they need to be able to communicate. They're just not sure how. You've tried the social stories, you've tried the PECs, but they tend to gravitate towards electronic devices. We have an assistive technology assessment done, and you and the speech pathologist have a conversation, and that speech pathologist is going to rely on you. Hey, what do you think? Well, I think that an iPad would do them justice with this communication database or this app that costs $300. All that could get written into her assessment, and then she goes on and recommends that for you, and then DDA covers that cost, right? So there's ways to navigate these services and to get you guys as much of these services as possible, because at the end of the day, they have to use this money. They have to use it. You can't frame it. If there's anything that I can just enforce, you cannot frame it as a want. There has to be
a need.
So when your CCS is asking you a bunch of questions and you're like, wow, why is this lady asking me so many questions? Because she's really trying to get down to the meat and the potatoes. Like, okay, how can I spin this so that we can get this? And so sometimes it's like, oh, well, he does this when he says, okay, perfect. All right, let's run with that. Let's run with that. That's what we're going to do.
So it's almost like the fiscal budget.
It was iPad that came out, and because they like watching YouTube on it. It's just not going to work.
So it's almost like the fiscal budget. Like the worst thing you want to do is at the end of that thing, give money back.
Yes.
I get that.
So even with your self-directed budget, and I know we're tapping into a lot of different topics, even with your self-directed budget, that self-directed budget is going to carry you through for your plan year, not the fiscal year. So let's say I'm using Morgan as an example. Morgan's APD, her annual plan date, which is also her effective date, is August 1st, right? It's August 1st, 2024. That budget is going to carry you from August 1st, 2024 to August 1st, 2025. If she gets approved for $400,000, you have that whole year to try to use up as much money as possible. And if you say you're looking at, because you'll get statements, you'll get, like a FMS statement that'll show you each service. It'll show you the hours that are broken down and the paychecks that actually went out to those folks. You'll see that amount. Mm-hmm. It doesn't go out to the team. It only goes to, the guardian or the individual. Mm-hmm. And it goes to the CCS. And really the CCS is required to look over those statements to make sure no one's going over those allocated funds, right? Mm-hmm. But if you have extra money in other lines that you're not using, you just reallocate that money. Yeah. Wow. So you just reallocate that money. So that's why I say, like, when you're developing the budget, try to think of everything that you can think of a need for. Let's put it in there. Get that budget really big, and then you use it for how you want throughout the year.
And one of the things that you talked about, like as far as the centers, well, like say say they have a Thanksgiving thing at this center every year, and that's something that Morgan wants to attend. It almost looks like an a la carte mode. Like, okay, you know what? I want to go to this, but I don't want to go to that center every single day. So what I'm going to do is go this particular day, or we're going to go for their little Christmas program. We love their Christmas program every year. Okay, give us a price. Like you say, they already have like a predetermined price.
Yeah.
So you want to take advantage of that. So, absolutely. I mean, I think, and when Tasha was telling me all about this, I've heard about things like this, but I think in a lot of ways, to me, it can be very advantageous for the parent or the guardian, because a lot of these things, especially in the evenings, the personal supports, you're doing them anyway.
You're doing them anyway.
Yeah. So
you're doing it anyway. You're helping your child get ready for bed. You're helping them take showers. You're preparing your meals. You're cleaning up after them. You're teaching them how to do chores. It's about time you were able to get a little reimbursement for your hard work. Right. So
Are
I
you
say-
sure that I can get paid now? Are you sure that we can get paid now?
I know, buddy.
Serious. I mean, well, but through the autism waiver. So through the autism waiver, we have to get your
That's 10
grandson
years.
bumped up. I know. It's terrible.
It is.
It's terrible.
Because
And
Morgan did not get approved until she was 18. And now they're saying, okay, she can only be on it until she's 21. The only reason why I'm not crying about it because it seems like DDA is going to be even better than the autism waiver.
Yeah. She'll have way more options. I mean, personal supports, just the service, but the personal support service alone goes up to 82 hours per week. 82 hours per week.
Can you believe
so, you know, I mean, community development services goes up to 40 hours per week. A lot of people do it around 30 because they're like, well, 40 is a lot. You know, so they'll do like from 9 to 3 because you also, I mean, they need to have fun. They need to kick back. No one wants to be in a structured environment every day, all day. Being told what to do, you know, so they need to be able to, you know, just have some autonomy for themselves and just some privacy and downtime, you know. But yeah, there's a lot more available once they get to DDA.
Tasha, we definitely got to have you on here again because I'm telling you
Absolutely.
guys, when I get her on the phone, I'm like, I'm writing down so many notes. I'm like, Tasha, I think of everything that I can ask. And I'm going to say this, and I said this before we got on. If she doesn't know, she will tell you, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. And she's not one of them people that's going to say she's going to find out and she doesn't get back to you. No. She gets back to you.
I will definitely get back to you. I actually am going to look into what waivers are available for both Virginia and DC.
Okay.
And how you guys can, you know, give some tips on how to navigate that. 22, I'm not making any promises. Denise, if you want, I will give you my email.
Okay.
And, you know, we could communicate. I'm not really on the Celebrate one, but I'll give you my work email for my other job through Sunrise Cedars, and we can communicate
you put your email? Can you put it in the comments?
Sure.
And do you mind people reaching out to you?
Not at all.
Y'all, she is great. As long as you don't take up my time.
Just give me a little bit of time. Like if I don't get back right away, I'm not ignoring you. I'm not ignoring you.
Bunny,
just give me a little bit of time.
I would love to hear the DDA program that's available in Michigan because that's what my cousin is. Okay. That's why, and she told me she's going to be listening because I am interested to hear what is equivalent to the DDA in Michigan, because they have a lot of different programs up there too. So when I tell you guys, my wheels have been turning because I got plans for Morgan and for myself.
I mean, there's travel, there's respite, there's different types of respite services, but one that everyone always loves is the respite camp. And with respite camp, depending on your child's abilities, they have travel camps where like the staff are paid to take your child to Florida, and it's just for a few days, but they go with a group of like 3 other people. There's 2 staff that'll take them. There's money for that. There's money for that. And through self-directed, you can identify it.
You can hand pick your people, guys. Ever since she's told me this, I have already gotten in touch with the people. I'm like, listen, be on your radar because when Morgan gets out of school, I'm going to hire you. I'm not kidding. Yeah,
absolutely. And it makes it so much easier.
It does.
For Morgan too, because transitioning is already a big adjustment. So when you're transitioning with people that you know, then it just makes it that much easier.
It does. It does.
And then you can slowly start to invite other people in. But the idea is to really have them be the transition to be as smooth, but for them to also be successful in the transition. We don't want to see them start to regress. We do expect some behaviors and, things like that. But you don't want to see them to start to, regress or experience or display new symptoms or, new diagnoses. That's never good. But that one thing I can say about all of these programs is with a person-centered approach, it gives you guys full authority. If that provider that you're working with in traditional is not working for you, bring your CCS or your caseworker or your human service worker back to the table. Tell them you want a new provider. This is what you're looking for. This is what you need. And if you cannot find me someone who can provide me with this, then I'm going to go this route. And for our next podcast, I'm going to have exactly what those other options are for you guys.
Yes, we definitely want you on again. And guys, this is what we're doing. This is where our voices have got to be heard because, like she says, if it's not working for you and it's not working for your child, then at that point, that's where you have to speak up and say, no, this doesn't work for me. And we do have some people that feel like, oh, I've been at this for a long time, so just sit back and shut up and let me. No. You help me to understand the process. And I know my child better than anyone. So you can't tell me, oh, I know the process so well that I can tell you what's going to be best for Morgan. No, give me all the information and let me tell you what I think would work for Morgan.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
This is Tasha, when I tell you, okay, you got to be on, y'all, we're going to have a part 2.
We definitely will. Absolutely. And if you guys can do any fairs, Disability Day, GTYI fairs, I know the schools offer them. I'm planning for even my agency to start attending them next year. Go. It's just a way for you to get out there, see what's out there beyond the arcs and the chimes that have been around forever and they don't have any, innovative ideas, right? There's a lot of agencies out here, even if you use them as a vendor, that are offering a lot. But it also just gives you an idea just for your own personal knowledge.
That's right.
So you know what to expect when your child is transitioning. There'll be providers there that should be able to speak to you about self-directed, hopefully, and to then kind of navigate you in those ways. There should be behavioral support providers that should be there because some children may need behavioral supports, right? That's a service that is also, and that's a part that's offered in DDA. That comes with consultation, assessments, a behavior plan, and then in-house instruction. So there's a lot of services out there, and I will help you guys understand it to the best of my ability.
This is so awesome. And I'm telling you, I told her she's going to become my best friend because everything that I could possibly think of, I will shoot her an email. Another thing that I want you to talk about next time, Tasha, is the Maryland ABLE accounts, the ABLE accounts overall, because there's a lot of misconception that goes along with that. My cousin Crystal, hopefully she's on here the next time because we're all going to put our heads together and tell you what we know to be true about the Maryland ABLE accounts. And I had to tell Tasha because my cousin told me, and I told Tasha, so let's table this, but we are going to have Tasha back on again. Absolutely. For those of you all that have her email address, if you need her email address, it's in the comments section. She is a wealth of information, a great source, and we are definitely going to have her on here again. If you would like to see her talk about something with the transition services, please shoot it out to us. Let us know, and we can have her to tackle that subject as well.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness.
This was great. Thank you so much. This is wonderful.
I really appreciate this, Bunny, you are getting a great start because I didn't find out a lot of this stuff until Morgan was 18.
Yeah.
So all of you guys.
And Bunny, you have my email too. So if you want to reach out, you can reach out.
Look at Bunny taking notes.
Absolutely. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, thank
please
you
reach
guys
out
so much. Tasha, we're going to have you on here again. We got to get you back on the schedule. So again, guys, it's never too early to get started on these transition services. If nothing else you've taken away from this, please take away something that is so important. You can never start too early. So get started now. You have Tasha's email address.
Yep.
Reach out to her, send us some stuff about. Somebody said, thanks for the info.
Oh,
Miss
you're
Harris said, thanks for
welcome.
this platform. Great job. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. Y'all spread the word, because this
Yeah.
right here, this is information that we don't get every day. This is something
Mhm.
that if you don't know, you just don't know. And it's a
Mhm.
terrible thing not to know, because
It
you're
is.
doing your child a disservice. Because if you don't get started on this early enough, you're really doing them a disservice.
Absolutely.
So
And you
we
can't
just want
rely
to
on the
say,
schools for everything. So
yes,
this is
exactly.
really, this
We
is
gotta
great
think
that you have
outside the
this
wall.
vehicle. You do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes. So all right,
absolutely.
Tasha, well, thank you so much. And I'm
You're
gonna contact you
welcome.
because we want you back on the show.
Sounds good.
Yes, everybody have a
Absolutely.
good night. Thanks
All right.
again.
Thanks, everybody. Nice meeting you
Bye.
all. Well, take care.
Okay.